There we go. That one I know is live.
Last week, I brought about 20 of my subscribers to an LA mansion to cook up and network with big industry producers, and it was insane. We had producers who worked with Drake, Beyonce, Kanye, Future, Lil Baby, Glorilla, Don Toliver, and so many more pull up and collaborate with a bunch of up-and-coming producers. We even had the opportunity to go to one of the craziest studios in LA, and on top of that, visit Sony's studios and play beats for the label at their headquarters. It was an amazing experience. Before we get into all of that, let me explain the concept of the week. Essentially, for a long time, I've seen people doing these kind of camps, someone like Stafford and T9C, who essentially get a bunch of people to stay all in one mansion for about a week, and everyone cooks up, networks, and pretty much lives together for that week. So I wanted to take that idea and kind of put my own little spin on it, and instead of just having a bunch of up-and-coming guys networking with each other, I wanted to also bring all my big industry producer friends who live in LA to the house so that these up-and-coming guys could work with them and hopefully step their foot into the music industry. And I had seen T9C doing something similar to this in Europe, so I actually DM'd him once to ask him how the camps were kind of doing, if they were successful, and he said they were, and a little bit later he hit me back to do a collab camp. We agreed to do one when the time was right, and after a few months had passed and we weren't as busy, we booked the Airbnb. Then we made a submission form where people sent in their music, why they wanted to come to the camp, and all that kind of stuff. Posted it on my Instagram story, his Instagram, and then we started inviting people once those submissions started coming in. And within a few weeks of posting those Instagram stories, we had sold out all the spots to the camp, and it was just a matter of time until the camp started. So the first night was pretty much just everyone coming in. There was really nothing crazy going on, no crazy plans. We just wanted to set up all of our gear, get the house situated, and kind of get to know each other. And the house was super, super nice and perfect for what we needed. It had a ton of bedrooms in the bottom of the house, so they were kind of out of the way whenever everyone was all there. And on the middle floor, we had a crazy acoustic piano by this big window overlooking the pool and the hills of LA. We had a big-ass living room where me and T9C actually crashed and stayed on the couch. A super big kitchen, and then also there was a built-in studio into the house, so we had to set up a studio in there. Once we checked out the house, dropped off our stuff, me and T9C headed to Costco to pick up some food, snacks for the week to just have at the house. And then for dinner that night, we just got a ton of pizzas from Costco, and then we did a little pass the aux kind of event where we had everyone playing their beats in that studio room, kind of build that chemistry that we could build on throughout the week. And while we had all the producers in the studio playing their beats, my boy Powers Pleasant pulled up, who's worked with Joey Badass, Juice WRLD, Denzel Curry, and so many more, and he just kind of chilled in the front room cooking up with people, talking. But honestly, we were all kind of jet lagged and tired from that travel day, so we kind of went to bed a little bit early to make sure we got some rest for the first full day, day 2. Alright, just woke up, day 1. We got T9C Grenadier over here. About to fucking try to cook up on this old out-of-tune piano real quick. So like I said, this was our first full day, and we kind of had a template or a plan for how these days were going to be structured out in our minds. The first thing we would do is wake up, get ready, and then we would have a masterclass in the morning taught by me and T9C, where we would talk about a bunch of gems for networking, business, and stuff like that, and then also break down some of our major placements. Then after that, we would cook up for the whole afternoon, and then at nighttime, we would start hitting up a bunch of big producers and trying to get a bunch of big name people to come to the house and network with everybody. So anyways, the first thing we started with was a networking masterclass. And the reason we started with this is I wanted to do a masterclass on how to actually network in the studio, because I knew that a lot of the guys that had come out here had probably never been in the room with bigger producers or any producers in general. And I wanted to give them some tips on how to talk to people, how to approach people, how to make sure you get the most out of the camp and you get as many opportunities and connections as you can. So yeah, relationships over everything. It's more important to build the relationships than it is to make 1,000 beats while you guys are here. My mindset, whenever I've been in your guys' shoes and I'm going to a camp, I'm always like, I'd rather meet all these people that I'm gonna work with for the next 10 years than like be so stressed about getting like a beat or a song or whatever placed like right here at the camp. Real quick, before we get into the rest of the camp and all the crazy stuff that happened, if you click the first link in the description down below, I dropped the LA Files, which is a bunch of uncut footage from this camp, exclusive videos of me cooking up in the studio, all of these master classes uncut. You get all the gems like you were sitting in the room with us. We're gonna talk about networking, how to build your online brand, how to make money as a producer, breaking down Drake songs, Lil Baby songs, and so much more. So if you want to check that out, the first 50 people will be able to get a discount. It'll be the first link in the description down below. But anyways, let's get back into it. So anyways, once we finished the masterclass for the day and the placement breakdown, it was time to cook up. And one of the first things I cooked up was one of my favorite samples that we made the whole entire trip with my boy Juice. What I started doing during this camp is I brought my Chroma Console guitar pedal from my studio to the camp, and I was taking these other producers' full finished melodies, like this one right here. And then I was flipping it and processing it through my guitar pedal to make it sound like this. Sounds pretty crazy. Here's some more clips of that. Well, I took his whole loop even with the bass line and then put it through the guitar pedal, so it like,
Okay, that's crazy.
So anyways, we pretty much just kept cooking up throughout the afternoon. We had people set up throughout the entire house, everyone cooking up. And after we've been cooking up for a while, we started to have some people pull up to the house around the evening time. First off, we have my boy Pilgrim, who's worked with Baby Keem, Don Tolliver, Roddy Ricch, and so many more. O Ross came through, who's super close with Key Glock. UY, Tomb, Mineral Station. My boy T9C invited Adam Vattel, who worked on the last Kanye West album. My boy Soul Got Hits came through, and he's got some crazy credits I didn't realize. He worked on Pound Cake by Drake, Drunk in Love by Beyonce and Jay-Z, and a ton of other hits. And my vocalist Sarah Kennedy also came through. And while everyone was cooking, I took a few of the guys and we picked up dinner for everyone at In-N-Out. And as you can see in this clip right here, I'm gonna go from flipping samples to flipping burgers. But anyways, we had a good time that night, and this is what it looked like. And at some point, I noticed that Adam Vattel had a bunch of people circled around him, and he was talking, giving a bunch of game on how to produce stuff, telling stories from behind the scenes, working with these big artists. And I thought it was super, super cool to see that these bigger guys were super down to earth and super down to just talk and network. But after we all cooked and talked for a while, we kind of got a little tired, winded down by playing some Mario Kart, and called it a night. Oh my god, I fucking speed boosted myself off the track. Start off day 3, we started with the masterclass again, and this time I was talking about building your online brand, because I feel like it's super easy to feel like as a producer the only way to make it is getting these big placements, living in the right cities, and knowing all these big people. But really, at least in my personal experience, all of these big accolades that I've got, all of it has kind of came from my online brand. I would say at least 75% of my songs come from people using my stuff without me intentionally trying to get it placed with a certain artist. So I talked a lot about how to build your YouTube channel, your short form content, Instagram or TikTok. And towards the end, I talked a lot about consistency and why I think most people do not make it when they're building their online brand. Most people make less than 10 videos and quit, claim it doesn't work. But yeah, it takes like hundreds of uploads, months, probably realistically like years to get something that's actually worth like build a brand that's worth having. And once I finished yapping for an hour and a half about building your online brand, T9C broke down one of his most recent placements, Redbone by Lil Baby and Glorilla. And once he finished breaking that down, everyone went back cooking up all around the house on all the different setups. And I was just chilling on the couch trying to figure out what food I should order for the night, figuring out catering and all that stuff. So I sat there for a while looking at different restaurants and figuring out what we could cater for 20 plus people. And like I said, everyone was just kind of cooking up, working with each other, waiting for these big producers to pull up at nighttime.
All right, so welcome back to the channel. Little video today. Here we got on there. I'm sorry. I'm playing. We're cooking some shit a little bit right now. We're kind of unwinding, kind of chilling. My name's Jack, by the way. Crosby Beach. Shout out, follow the tag in the description below. If you can just description. Gangster. That type shit.
Some super dope guys came through this day as well. My boy Ghost Rage, who's worked with Future, Lil Baby, Glorilla, and a ton of big artists. Daniel Morris, who's got some crazy reggaeton placements, songs with A Boogie, NLE Choppa, and a bunch of other guys. UY pulled up again. Lucas Quinn pulled up. And at some point, I texted my boy Greg, who works at BeatStars, asking him if he knew any producers that were in LA right now who would be down to, you know, come and cook up. And almost instantly, he put me in a group chat with Hit Kid. If you don't already know who Hit Kid is, he's huge. He's essentially the guy who's responsible for blowing up Glorilla. He did her smash breakout hit FNF, produced the whole thing, and was even listed as a primary artist on that release. So given all that, I know that he's a busy guy. I really didn't expect him to pull up for long, but he was actually super down to earth and super cool. He stayed in that little studio room cooking up with almost every single person from the camp for like 12 hours straight. Then
after that, since I failed to secure the Chipotle, I just went back to In-N-Out and got In-N-Out for a second night in the row. And then around that time, Ghost Rage pulled up, and almost immediately he started breaking down his part to the beat to Glorilla's I Ain't Going, and also his song with Nav, Weirdo.
It was the only placement that I've ever had where like shivers actually like went down my arms when I heard it. And like I think it's cool, like she's promoting basically like an anthem about like anti-domestic abuse, and the song is fucking good. The original loop was this. I'll play with an audio file and then put it in the piano roll and chop it differently. Like, I then did this.
When Ghost Rage was breaking down Weirdo, he did this really, really weird thing where he essentially took one of his old melodies and sampled it into his MIDI and then started pitching it around in different places to flip it. And he even did it from scratch to kind of demo to everyone there how it works and how crazy it can sound.
I just fuck around with the piano roll.
And honestly, we kept working that whole night going crazy. Hickid came at around 4 p.m. and left at like 4 in the morning. And honestly, it was super motivating to see how much energy and passion he had about making music.
What we doing? Let's go! Wake up!
Earlier in the day, we were all talking and he was kind of giving his insight to how he produces for artists, what he's like in the studio, how he doesn't really see himself as just a beat maker who pulls up to play beats, but he's more like a coach telling the artist what to do. And he was telling the whole story of how he put together Glorilla's FNF, how they shot the music video the same day, released it the next day. But anyways, a bit after that, Hickid dipped and there was nobody extra in the house, so I locked up the house for the night and went to bed to try to get a few hours of sleep before we had to start the next day. Alright, so on day 4, I woke up tired as fuck. But the day was pretty much the same thing. We woke up, did a masterclass where T9C broke down a song with Lil Durk and a song with Drake, cooked up for a little bit, and then my boy Daniel Saint pulled up to do some photography and videography of the day. And then in the afternoon, we had a bunch of crazy people pull up. The first being my boy B Dollars. And if you don't already know, this is Lil TJ's main engineer and producer. And I've got a few records with TJ, so we've worked on a few records together indirectly, so it was super dope to meet him in person and see all the guys get to, get his email, get that contact to start sending beats to Lil TJ. And then my boy Evans, who's worked with Sub Baby, Gunna, NLE Choppa, pulled up and he made some of the craziest beats that I heard during the whole camp. Around the same time that he was cooking up, going crazy with some of the guys in the studio room, my boy Greg Mateo from BeatStars and Will from Sony pulled up to kind of do a Q&A or masterclass on publishing.
I think about it this way. Sometimes it's what have you done for me lately in some of these deals in terms of you got signed because of a hit. That hit last 5 months. Yeah. Dude, you're in a deal for 6 years, right? And so that excitement that got you in that deal might not be the same way a year later. This even goes for artists and labels. You got to continue your momentum.
We pretty much just talked about a bunch of the misconceptions of publishing, the difference between co-publishing deals, admin deals, how to make sure you're collecting all your royalties. And once we finished giving the class and they finished answering and talking to some of the guys about questions that they had, Will talked to me on the side and told me how impressed he was with the camp and all the people that I had brought together, and said that if we were free, we could go to the Sony headquarters, the brand new studios in LA, and have everyone play their beats at the label headquarters, which was crazy. So we were definitely going to do that the next day. After they talked to some of the guys for a while, giving them tips on publishing and all that kind of stuff, my boy Dunk Rock pulled up, which if you don't already know, he produced Fuck You Mean by Gunna, some other Gunna records, and he's such a good, chill guy, so I was definitely looking forward to having him pull up. And before this, I was actually talking to my boy Juice and Damon, who came to the camp, and they were talking about a little networking tip that they were using during the camp that I think you guys could definitely use if you're ever in the studio with some of your friends trying to network with some bigger people. Essentially, what they would do is instead of, being like, yo, my name is Kavi, I make crazy loops, they would have their boy say it for them. So instead of just saying, yo, I make crazy loops, my friend would say, yo, you gotta work with Kavi, he's got the craziest soul loops. It just comes off a little bit differently. Getting a cosign from someone else, it just comes off more organic and less like you're trying too hard to network with them. And I've definitely used this before, but they put it into words and something kind of clicked in my brain. And my boy Pablo has some of the craziest Gunna type loops that I've ever heard. But whenever Dunk came in, I had to connect them. I had to pull that kind of maneuver and make sure he got that connect. But anyways, once Dunk Rock came in, I had to go pick up some wing stuff for everyone, make sure everyone ate, because after that, we had to leave the house and head out to Paramount Studios, which is one of the nicest studios in LA. Right when you walk in, there's so many plaques on the hallways. We got stuff from The Weeknd, Bruno Mars, Lil Wayne. There's even pictures of Tupac, Michael Jackson, Quincy Jones, people like that in these studios. And we booked the biggest room in the building. And when you walk in, that room of the studio has its own lounge. Then there's the main room with that huge console board, make you feel like you're, you know, some crazy engineer, all that to just play some basic ass trap beats. We also have this crazy live room with a real organ and a crazy real acoustic piano. Inside the live room, there was also another studio that you could close the glass door on and people could cook up in there. And seeing everyone's reaction and just like how inspiring the space was definitely super, super awesome. Overall, we were just having a great time talking, making music, filming videos, and a bunch of stuff like that.
Yeah, don't tell nobody. All right, I'm gonna.
The beat that Pablo and Dunk Rock were cooking up was crazy, and I could just tell that the chemistry between the two of their sounds were gonna work super, super well together. It was honestly just so cool to see this guy, Pablo, that I've been working with for a few years, be able to work with someone whose sound that he really fucks with. And I feel like seeing Dunk Rock and Pablo work together just kind of switched something in my brain, and it started to really settle in that I was actually really helping people. And what started as something that just seemed like a fun thing to do for a week started to turn into something a little bit deeper and a little bit more meaningful. Seeing people get excited whenever they were working and cooking up with a big producer in the studio, taking photos on their phone and all this kind of stuff. Even hearing from the big producers whenever I would walk them out, how inspiring it was seeing that I, you know, organized all these people together and put the whole thing together was just super inspiring to see. This was by far the best day of the camp at this point, at least in my eyes. And I'm not sure what it was, but it felt like something about this day, something kind of changed. It felt like we went from a group of random producers to a bunch of friends that were just living with each other, making music, shooting the shit, and just fucking around. Alright, so on day 5, like I said earlier, Will had invited us to the Sony studios, and I just want to give a shout out to BeatStars Publishing and Sony Publishing for one, just being an amazing group of people that I work with, but also letting us come through, see all the studios, and give all these guys that came the opportunity to play their beats at the label headquarters. So anyways, we got there and we got to look at all the brand new studios. This building has only been open for a few months, and it looked so sick. In the biggest studio, there's been artists like Beyonce who've recorded in there already. So Will walked us around the whole headquarters and kind of showed us everything. And then we all headed into a listening room with Will, where everyone got to play one of the best beats for Will and get his contact information so that they could send beats to Sony for all the artists that they're working on developing right now. After that, we took a group picture with the Sony logo, then we headed back to the house to cook up and get ready for the night. We had some lunch, and after that, my boy Sambo had pulled up, and if you don't already know, he engineers and produces on every single Suicide Boys record. Once he got there, he gave a super long masterclass on how he engineers, mixes, and adds post-productions to the songs for Suicide Boys, and he dropped a ton of gems. Unfortunately, my camera cut out at some point, but he talked about a bunch of mistakes that producers make all the time whenever they're sending their beats to artists.
Say like the main mistake people make when they're mixing their beats is mixing it to like make the beat sound as good as it can be, not realizing that like the vocal's gonna have to be in there. So like maybe like your main loops don't have to be as loud as you think they are. The vocals are always gonna be on top, but like the best way to anchor vocals into a beat is to have like something as a reference, and that's the snare or the clap. A good rule of thumb is to like make your snare or your clap really loud.
At the same time that Sambo was answering a bunch of people's questions on mixing,
Somebody
giving them a
told me
bunch
that
of gems
before.
on that, an A&R from APG, Lisa, pulled up to listen to everyone's beats. So I grabbed like
I never
5
sent
or
beats
so
to people, but
producers at a
somebody
time, and
definitely
we
told
all
me
went
that.
into that studio room to play Lisa beats. She played us a ton of unreleased records from huge artists just to kind of give us a vibe of the stuff that they need at the moment. Obviously, I could not record and post that, but we had everyone who was at the house come in the studio and play their best 2 to 3 beats for the artists that they're working on right now. And after that, my boy Evans and Ghost Rage pulled back up, same guys as the other nights, and they made some crazy ass beats. And one of the craziest moments of this whole camp was this motherfucker Ghost Rage, bro. He's crazy. I was watching him cook up a beat, and then he just started playing snare rolls on his computer keyboard like it was nothing. Later, my vocalist Sarah
That was
Kennedy and her
fire.
friend Jilly, who also makes vocal samples for companies like Splice, pulled up to cook up some vocal samples. And one thing that I thought was super funny, Sarah came the first night, talked to everyone, just kind of got the vibes. And then when she came back on that last night, she walked in the room and the first thing she said was, "What the fuck happened here?" The first night, it was so professional. Everyone was, you know, a little bit reserved. And the last night she came, she said it was like a bunch of friends who had known each other for years, just fucking around and having a good time. And honestly, it was true. I didn't think that I would get this close to that group of guys in just a few days, but working with all these people and making these super solid relationships throughout the week was honestly one of the most inspiring experiences that I've had in a long time. Anyways, after talking for a while, we wanted to make some vocal samples with Sarah and Jilly. We had a little bit of a problem. We couldn't really put the microphone onto the stand. So shout out my boy Grenadier, because he came through with a crazy idea. He grabbed a trash bag from the kitchen and tied her mic super tightly to the mic stand. So we were literally recording vocals into the trash.
This trash bag is so funny. It's gonna be so funny.
But even with that janky ass setup, we went crazy and made a ton of vocal samples.
I don't know why. I don't know why. I keep singing these songs about you. Every time I see you, I don't want the preview. I just I need you. Touch you. All I need is 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 you. You.
We went so crazy, we were just doing them rapid fire. I think we had at least 20 project files, 20 vocal samples that I still have to go on my computer and work through. And honestly, seeing Sarah work in person was super, super inspiring. I've never worked with a vocalist in person. I've been working with her for 4 years. Seeing it live in the flesh and hearing how good her voice sounded without auto-tune was just super, super crazy to witness. But anyways, a little bit later, my boy Iyano and Palazzo pulled up, and they've worked with some crazy artists like Central C, Tory Lanez, Young Thug, NBA Youngboy, A Boogie, and a bunch of other guys. And I wasn't actually in the room, but from what I heard, they hit it off instantly with my boy Juice and Damon, who also live in Germany. Before I did the camp, I was honestly unsure if I was ever going to do another one of these again because of all the planning, but I will 1000% be doing another one of these camps because it was definitely one of the best experiences I have ever had in this music shit. So if you want to join the next one, I put a link somewhere in the description down below where you can put in your email and we'll notify you whenever we open up submissions for the next camp. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you like seeing content like this, and I'll catch y'all later. Peace. Travis Scott is by far one of the most iconic rappers in the game. His unique sound, persona, and brand have made him one of the hottest artists since 2015. But one key thing acts as the backbone to all of Travis Scott's success: the insane production behind all of his songs. So in today's video, we're going to take a deep dive into all the crazy production techniques used across Travis Scott's biggest albums and take you inside the dark, twisted world of Travis Scott's production. Travis Scott's production is often the standout part of his songs, and he even admits this in an interview.
I think with production, man, I pay like very close attention because like that's like my favorite thing in like music. I gotta just make sure I have like just that ill shit niggas just can't get.
And there's a few main things that are consistent across all of his production. All of his beats take you to a different world. They're psychedelic, dark, and somehow they feel futuristic while also feeling nostalgic and vintage at the same time. Most of his beats are typically sitting anywhere from 130 to 150 BPM, somewhere in that range, and he has some key instruments that are used in some of his most iconic productions: synths, bells, distorted bass, hard-hitting drums, and guitar. There are countless songs where Travis uses a guitar, but there are a few that really capture this psychedelic, almost drunk guitar sound that Travis is known for. So to build a foundation for our beat, I wanted to go with that dark guitar kind of Travis sound. So I grabbed my guitar, my phone, and I just recorded a simple idea into my voice memos app. Now this is sounding decent, but it's definitely not screaming Travis Scott to me right now. And that brings me to one of the most important parts of Travis's production, effects and processing. For example, if you take a listen to the original sample on Antidote by Travis Scott, it didn't feel super gritty and dark like it does in his record. But after Wonder Girl and Eastbound flipped it with some filters and effects, it came out much darker, grittier, and it feels like it's part of Travis's world that he creates with his music. So to level up that simple guitar idea I just recorded, let's get into processing. Alright, so the first thing I did is I took this guitar recording and I just pitched it up an octave. So now it sounds like this. Definitely a little bit harsh, but we're gonna add some more effects that are really gonna make this cool. So I went into Logic and they've got guitar amp presets over here. So I grabbed this Mars Retrograde preset right here. And if we turn on those effects, we get this. This sounds sick, but it's definitely a little off time and still really harsh. So I grabbed this Cymatics Deja Vu plugin, which is half timing the melody. So it's pitching it down an octave and making it play half as fast. I put it on this 1/4 setting with the smooth turned up. It sounds like this. So I bounced all of that into one new audio file, and then I added some reverb, another guitar amp plugin, and an essential plugin if you want to get this weird, trippy Travis Scott kind of sound, H-Delay. And on the settings on this, you're going to want to make sure that you turn dry and wet down, turn the feedback up quite a bit, mess with this filter right here so you're actually EQing the delay sound. And then the key to getting that weird kind of delay that Travis Scott uses in all of his songs is to mess with the modulation right here. This is actually messing with the pitch of the delay, which gives it a super trippy vibe. Finally, to finish the processing on the guitar, I took some inspiration from Can't Say off of Astroworld. If you listen closely, you can tell that it's a warped guitar melody that's been resampled and has this chopped stop and go kind of effect. So I took our guitar recording with all the effects and bounced it down into a new audio file, and then I chopped the audio every half bar. After that, I just dragged the audio files a little bit to the left, creating these little gaps of silence, and this creates that chopped, resampled kind of effect. From here, I wanted to fill the melody out a little bit, and I really liked the dark ambient bells on Outside.
That's fucking crazy.
So I went into my Elements of Trap Analog Lab Bank and grabbed this Fantasy Bell preset, and I put down a simple pattern that I then half sped so that it fits nicely with the guitar, and I got this. Now I wanted to bring in an iconic sound to Travis Scott's production, a synth bass. Deep synth basses are a huge part of Travis Scott's sound. Typically they're used for breakdowns, which we're going to get into later in this video, but in songs like Sicko Mode and Franchise, they use a gritty synth bass as the main bass for the song.
Make this here with all the ice on in the booth at the gate.
And those basses have this distorted, punchy, almost 808-like kind of sound. So I found a similar sound on my computer and put down this super simple bass line. We'll dive into this more a bit later, but the vintage retro kind of aesthetic is a huge part of Travis's sound. So to enhance that feeling without adding anything too crazy, I added a vinyl noise texture just to give off that old record vibe, like maybe this was a sample off of a vinyl. Now that that's done, the first section of this melody is finished. However, a huge reason that Travis Scott's production is so amazing is because it tells a story. I think to songs like 90210, The Ends, or even songs like Sicko Mode that have so much going on in the production that really feels like you're part of an experience rather than just a normal 2 or 3 minute song. And part of telling a story with the production involves taking out and putting in new sounds to make the beat feel like it's progressing and it's not just the same thing looped over and over. So for the next part, I wanted the beat to build up into something more big and epic sounding for a hook section. And the perfect inspiration for this anthemic rage kind of feeling is one of the best songs off his latest album, Utopia. This song had the whole rap community in a chokehold when it first dropped, and if you were one of the lucky people who got to see it performed live, you already know how contagious the energy on this beat is. And one key reason that this beat has so much energy are those bright synth chords. So to replicate this feeling for our beat, I grabbed this aggressive saw synth from Alchemy, which is a stock Logic plugin by the way, and I put down these simple chords. These chords are super simple, but this chord progression has been used on countless Travis Scott songs, from experimental songs like 90210 to more typical trap songs like Houston Fornication. So let's break down those go-to Travis Scott chords a little bit more. Alright, so to make this chord progression, it's actually super easy. So we have this C minor chord which starts with a C, and then a minor chord has 2 spaces in between the middle note and the root note, up here to an E flat, and then 3 spaces to the top note, finishing off on that G. And then it moves up to this chord, which is a C sharp major chord, starting with that C sharp. And then for a major chord, instead of that 2 space gap right there, you're gonna have a 3 space gap and then a 2 space gap on top. And then we go to an F minor chord right here. But if all that kind of just sounded like a bunch of nonsense to you, let me just show you how to remake it really quick. So what you wanna do is put on the scale quantize right here. I've got the key in F minor, and I'm gonna build this first chord by hitting C, and then I'll skip 1 note that's in the scale. Up here, skip this note that's in the scale. And then I'm just going to copy this over, and then I'm just going to pitch it up 1. Then I'm going to take this middle note, pitch that up, copy and paste it over 1 more time. And then on the second part, I just take this, put it up 5 semitones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then take this high note and transpose it down an octave. And just like that, the chord progression is made. All right, so now that we got the base of the chords down, there's one technique we're missing that's going to bring these chords to the next level: pitch modulation. And before I lose you with that, it might sound a little bit confusing, but that's pretty much just a fancy way for saying that the pitch is bending. So it's like sliding up and down in pitch. This pitch bending really adds this trippy, weird, psychedelic sound to Travis Scott's music, and you can hear a perfect example of it on the chords on Fiend. So I went into the chord MIDI and made them slide by opening up the automation clip in the bottom left corner, selecting pitch bend, and then making the chords slide down before the next chord hits. So I could definitely leave this as is for the hook section, but on one of my favorite songs, Nightcrawler, there's this super ear-grabbing synth lead that plays throughout the song. And although the lead I'm gonna add doesn't exactly sound like that, I wanted to add something to add some more ear candy and give some more energy to this section of the beat. So I copied the chord MIDI onto a monophonic lead sound, so it's only playing 1 note at a time. I also copied over the pitch modulation and got this. This synth section is adding a ton of energy to this beat, and it's also making it feel more futuristic. But like I mentioned earlier, a really cool part of Travis's production is that he kind of combines this modern futuristic sound with more vintage aesthetics and inspiration, making it feel futuristic and nostalgic at the same time. So I went back in to build a third section of this melody using another key instrument to Travis Scott's sound: bells. So, taking some inspiration from the songs you just heard, I grabbed 2 Bell Analog Lab presets from my Elements of Trap kit that I actually recorded myself on my real Mellotron keyboard, which is an iconic instrument used by Cubeats, who have produced countless songs for Travis Scott. More on Cubeats in just a second, but let's listen to those bells really quick. These bells sound solid already, but as I just mentioned, Cubeats has produced countless classics for Travis Scott, arguably helping shape his sound into what it is today. And a huge part of Cubeats' iconic sound is that vintage processed vibe. So to take these bells to the next level and make them feel more vintage, I added the Cymatics Origin plugin, which is pretty much acting like an old tape machine, detuned a little bit, the pitch is wobbling, and also adding a little bit of saturation. And after that, I added a trippy delay preset from the H910 Harmonizer plugin, which is an amazing plugin for getting that Cubeats vintage detuned kind of sound. Next up, another sound that instantly gives that Travis Scott synthy kind of vibe are synth arps. So I went into the Elements of Trap kit and I grabbed these synth arp phrases and put it on top of the bells. And to finish off the third section of the melody, I brought back in that distorted guitar that we made earlier, but I half sped it to kind of create more space so that the bells can take up the high-end frequencies and shine a little bit more. Then I also brought back in the original guitar recording from my iPhone without all of those crazy guitar amps and distortion plugins, pitched that up an octave with some vintage processing, and this is what I got. And now the melody is finished. So now it's time to get into Travis's favorite part of his production.
The drums. The drums. I don't give a fuck about nothing else.
But before we get into adding some hard-hitting drums, if you need some next-level sounds that inspire you and give your beats a more unique and interesting sound, you've got to check out this Elements of Trap kit. I spent thousands of dollars in over 6 months working with session musicians to put together over 2,000 insane trap samples. This kit has crazy phrases with live violin, real flute, real guitar, full melody loops, those presets that you just heard in the loop that we were making, and a ton of hard-hitting drums that we're going to be using to make drums in our beats. So, as a thank you for watching this video and supporting me, you can use the code TRAVIS50 at checkout and you'll get 50% off, and it'll be the first link in the description down below. But anyways, back into it. Travis Scott's melodies help build the world and the vibe of his tracks, but his drums are what makes the songs hit and give them that rager kind of energy that Travis Scott needs in a song. And if you didn't already know, Travis Scott actually got his start in the industry by producing for huge artists like Jay-Z and Kanye West, and he was always known for his unique and insane drums. So we definitely need to make sure we nail the drums to get his sound down right. And to start out, one of my favorite new-ish beats that Travis has got on recently is the one on Franchise. If you listen to the drums, you can hear how there's a clap and a snare that are kind of alternating when they're playing, creating this kind of call and response feeling. Doing this makes the drums more interesting to the listener because it's not just playing the same exact sound every single bar. Travis Scott's production has a ton of tiny details that a lot of people might not notice, so don't be afraid to add some little subtle stuff like that to make your beats more interesting. Anyways, to start off our drums, I put down 2 snares, with one playing every single bar and then another one that comes in every other bar. Next up, we need some trappy hi-hats to give this beat some more energy, and while we could go super crazy on these hi-hats with a bunch of rolls and pauses and stuff like that, after listening to countless Travis songs, I've noticed that a lot of his hi-hats are really simple, with some of them just having a straight-up 2-step hi-hat pattern.
But it's life I cannot change. It's not electric, this shit gassed up. Can you catch it? The Virgin just keep one wants to sell, he's sending texts, ain't sending kites. Yeah, he say keep that on lock.
On Butterfly Effect specifically, you can hear a signature technique that Murda Beats uses on his hi-hats. Murda went in and shifted the hi-hats just a little bit off beat, and this helps create more groove and swing in the drums. So I did something similar. I put down a simple 2-step hi-hat pattern and then shifted them just a little bit to the left to make them off time, added an open hat, and got this. Another thing Murda Beats did on Butterfly Effect is add a hard-hitting, bouncy kick pattern. And if you listen to the kicks right in the beginning of the pattern, you can hear that signature boom, boom. You'll see what I mean.
But it's life I cannot change.
I wanted to add a hard-hitting kick like that, so I drew in a pattern messing with the velocities and those double kick hits that I was talking about, and I paired it with a hard-hitting Spins 808 to get this. Another super important producer who works with Travis Scott all the time is OZ, and he's produced classics from Sicko Mode, Highest in the Room, and recently, I Know. And a huge part of OZ's signature sound with Travis Scott is his unique bounce and percussion. Take a listen to I Know and try to listen for the laser effect and the cowbell.
Tell me if you still love me.
As you can tell, those drums have a super dope bounce, and those unique percussions and sound effects really add to that feeling, so I took some inspiration and I added a laser sound effect and a cowbell into this beat and got this. At this point, I feel like the drums were just missing a little bit of grittiness. And I really liked the bass that we did on the melody earlier that kind of sounded similar to Sicko Mode and Franchise. So I EQ'd out some of the lows on that bass so that the 808 could take up the low end, but the high end character frequencies of the bass were also there at the same time. So I layered those two together and got this. drums are super solid right now. But for that Fiend style section with those big anthemic synth chords, I kind of wanted to switch up the drums just a little bit, and they did something super interesting with the kicks and snares on Fiend, which I'll touch on in just a second. But one cool little Easter egg on the drums on Fiend is that they used the same iconic snare sample that Kanye used on Good Morning. It's no secret that Kanye West is a huge influence on Travis Scott. So seeing him use that same iconic snare rim shot kind of sound was just a cool moment in that beat. So I added that Good Morning snare into the beat, letting it play once every 4 bars. But before I play you that, if we listen again to the drums on Fiend, you can hear that they actually deleted one of the snare hits and replaced it with a kick. Taking away that snare right there and then replacing it with a kick just adds a completely new bounce and feeling to these drums, and I thought it would sound super fire in our beat. Moving on, I wanted to switch up the 808 in the bass for the next section of the beat, and I took some inspiration from the bouncy, plucky synth basses that you can hear on songs like R.I.P. Screw and Impossible.
Late night, you know the deal. On a late night.
So I went into the Elements of Trap Analog Lab Bank, and I found this Dawn Pluck, which has that cool, plucky synth kind of sound. So that's sounding pretty sick. And although Travis has a ton of songs using these more modern drums that we're using in this beat, a huge part of his earlier sound were these distorted, dirty drum breaks. So I thought it would be cool to add some live drums into this beat, distort the shit out of them, and kind of use them almost as more of a texture and perk loop instead of the main drums for the song. Kind of similar to how they used a live hi-hat sample on I Can Tell.
I can tell, baby.
So as you can tell, those live hi-hats sound super warped and pitched down. And also, I love those snare rolls that finish off every pattern on I Can Tell. So I brought in a live drum break and a live snare fill from my upcoming Vintage Essentials kit, pitched them down, and distorted the fuck out of them. Finally, for a transition and just a little bit of ear candy, I added this creepy riser sound and put a crazy pitch modulated delay from H delay to create this super trippy, eerie kind of texture. At this point, the beat could 100% be finished, but that's not like Travis. Travis is constantly pushing his production to new heights and going balls to the wall to make the final product as good as it can possibly be. And one of the most iconic ways that Travis does this is with the help of his right-hand man, Mike Dean. Without Mike Dean, there is no doubt that Travis Scott's sound would not be what it is today. Mike Dean mixes and masters pretty much all of Travis's records, but he's not just a glorified mix and master engineer, he's a legendary producer. And when it comes to Travis Scott's and Mike Dean's collabs, one main thing comes to my mind: the legendary Mike Dean synth outro. But before we add that, if you learned anything from this video so far, just hit the subscribe button so I can keep making more videos like this. I appreciate you guys watching. Anyways, if we take a listen to some of Mike Dean's best synth outros for Travis Scott, you can hear a few main elements that pop up over and over again. First, a deep synth bass. Second, a synth lead. Third, some bright synth chords. And finally, some distorted and warped live drum breaks. So to start off our synth breakdown, I went back into my drum break kit and I brought back in those same breaks that I used in the beat before, as well as a more distorted heavy break. And I pitched all of them down with some distortion, filtering, and even some halftime, and I got this. From here, I wanted to continue building the foundation for the synth outro with the thick synth bass that Mike Dean always uses with Travis Scott. And that's already sounding sick, but if we want to make it more ear-grabbing and really have that Mike Dean kind of feeling, we need some synth leads. And I really, really love the leads on the outro to the Scotts. If you listen closely, you can hear that there's one synth playing in left ear and one in the right ear, and it's kind of creating this call and response kind of effect, and it sounds sick. So So I grabbed 2 instances of a synth lead preset from Analog Lab, drowned them both in a ton of analog H delay, and made sure to pan one left and one right. And then I just freestyled on my keyboard and played some lead lines on this outro. If you were listening
Yeah, I would've
closely
had
to those
those
leads, you
keys
can also
fire.
hear that same pitch bending sound effect that we used on the chords earlier in this video, and it also sounds
Yeah,
pretty
if
similar to the lead
I
on
don't
the
make
highest
beats
in the
no
room.
more,
Anyways,
but back when I
finally, to
did, I
finish
would
this
get
off, I
intricate.
added some bright synth chords similar to the ones on Sirens, and they come in with a bit of a kind of stabby intro part before the main long chords come in. And this little triplet stab idea came from the stabby lead that Mike Dean did on the Scott's outro, and I think that this tiny little detail really just helps the outro transition into the next part with the chords. With that, the beat is finished. So let's take a listen and let me know in the comments down below if you think I did justice to Travis Scott's insane production. A nasty guitar. Synth section. Here we go. Just switch up. So good. If you want to learn why all your favorite rappers are obsessed with using beats from Tay Keith, click this video right here.
Have you ever seen or heard a singer, walk up to a piano accompanist and say something like, "Okay, Sam, let's play Ipanema in B flat, my key," right? And then you wonder, well, how in the heck does that work? Or how can I figure out what my key is for some tune? Well, that question about vocal ranges and the kind of connection to different keys, it's a pretty complex one to describe in text, yet it's really not very difficult to understand once it kind of sinks in and you can see it visually. So I'm going to explain it to you and clear some things up here in this video.
Bro, let's go.
All right. So the question we're dealing with today is how do I know or how do I figure out what is my key or what key is best for me to sing a tune in? Well, step one is to realize this truism, I guess. Okay, different songs all have different melody lines, right? That's what separates one tune from another. So you've got a different melody line, but each one of those melody lines have different ranges between their highest and their lowest note, right? Does that make sense? because there's somewhere in that melody line it's going to go up and down throughout the tune, and there's going to be some high and some low. So some tunes have bigger ranges and some are smaller, but they're different for every tune. So let me give you a couple examples of things right here. Say we're going to do the birthday. I'm going to pick a couple of easy ones like birthday song, right? Just so the tunes aren't knocking us out of the water here. Let's take a look at this. So say we're going to do the birthday song. What is it? So here we go. We're going to sing the birthday song, right? So we're going to sing, Happy Birthday to you. Right? So far, pretty small range. Ooh, it jumps all the way up there. Da, 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 da. Right? So if I was singing that tune there, da, da, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, that's a little high for me. I'm like, oh, that one kind of stretches me out just a little bit, right? It's just getting my vocal range is a little bit too high right there. So I'm like, well, you know what would be easier is if I could just sing this tune just down a little bit. Let's take the whole thing and just scooch it down just a little. Say, okay, well, let's do it, say, in starting it there. Say, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday. Now that's perfectly within my range, right? I can really, for me, and this is me alone, probably not you, I can do that pretty easy. Da 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 da, right? Da da da, da 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 da. So in this tune, for my voice only, it was easier for me to sing it like from here to here. Here was the entire distance of that melody line instead of up here because this was a little bit too high for me. So I just took the whole thing and scooched it down. Well, if you end up figuring out what key those are in, the first one I was playing it in was F, right? And the only reason that you can tell that is it's I'll do the melody on Happy Birthday to you. And I don't want to get into all the details of how you figure out what key a tune is in, but here's one super fast, super easy trick I can give you, and that is whatever the very last note and last chord of a tune is, 99.99% of the time, that's going to be the key. So let me show you this. If I'm playing Happy Birthday to you, you played through it, starting there, and that ends on an F, and highly likely then the last chord is going to be just an F major chord. And it turns out that is almost every time when you figure that out, whatever that last chord is, that will just be the key that the tune is in. So this was playing it in the key of F when I started here. Back up to the F chord, and the B flat chord, right? F, C, F. So it ended on an F chord. So an F. So in that case, that was the one that was a little bit too high for me because I didn't want to sing all the way up here. So I just shifted the whole thing down and instead played it in C, right? So I'm going to start here. Happy birthday to you. Sorry. I'm trying to get my hands out of the way. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Back to C chord. Happy birthday. Now when that reached up, I could sing that one. Right? That's going to go to, excuse me, F, C, G. So in that case, and again, I don't want to get you too hung up on the keys I was in. The point is, when I couldn't sing the birthday song in a particular spot because it just got a little bit too high for me, right? I just found a spot where that melody felt better in my range. Now that may not be the same for you, but in this case, the key of F was too high for me. So from now on, I'm going to walk up and say, hey, Sam, let's play the birthday song in C, right? So C is kind of my tune. So now let's go on to a tune number 2, just to make this point. Let's go on to some other nutty tune that, of course, you'd probably never ever sang while you're out working a gig, but hey, you would at a baseball game, and that's Take Me Out to the Ball Game, right? So, yeah, we said that the key of C worked for me for the birthday song. Well, let's try the key of C and Take Me Out to the Ball Game. So that tune is, right? So it's take, but I'm going to be doing that. Take, because I've got a real low voice, right? So I'm going to be, take me out to the ball game. Take, right? I'll play the melody here so you can see it. It would be, take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd, right? Then fine and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never get back, 'cause it's red, right? Well, that one's a little bit above. So where I was singing that seemed a little low. So instead of doing it there, let me move it up a little bit. Right? That I don't want to do it there because that got too low for me, so I'm going to shift up. I'll go up this case. Let's start it on the F. Take me out to, take me out to the ball game. Ah, that one's feeling a little better. Take me out to the crowd, right? Buy me some and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never get back. Well, that one's falling pretty well for me. Take me out to the ball game. That's not so low. So hey, in this case, I think I like Take Me Out to the Ball Game in the key of F rather than in C, right? So I'd rather do that one here. Right? And on and on and on. So the point was, and that's why I did it that way. In the birthday song, the key of F was too high for me for that tune, so I'd rather sing that one in the key of C. But in the case of Ball Game, Take Me Out to the Ball Game, the key of C was too low for me, so I'd rather sing that one in F. See what I mean? So that's what's kind of funny. It's not as though you have a particular key for you. It's that a particular song is going to be best played for your particular range in some particular key, right? I.e., you need to shift the melody line into your range as best as you can, and then determine what that key is needed to fit the melody line there, right? Get it into a spot where you can sing it. So you can kind of sum it up as just saying that your range doesn't identify one key that's best for you, but rather you should sing tunes in whatever particular key for a tune that gets it into your range, right? It's kind of a backwards thing. Does that make sense? For example, again, like I said, I might need to sing the song Misty in the key of F, but I might need to sing the song Jingle Bells in the key of D. So it's not like F is my key.
Thanks for your help, dude. And you were help. I appreciate it. What the fuck is happening here? Alright, let's switch to another video. Where the fuck did my video go? Put this one up there. Let's put this one up there. Sorry about the camera, guys, not being bright enough. Comments.
And I'm free falling. Hello and welcome. We are here to teach you how to sing harmony, which is no small task in my opinion. And I am so excited to be here with Julia Ziegler, who is our Singio community specialist. So she is in our Singio community helping and supporting and teaching, and she's marvelous at singing harmony. Oh, you really are. And so I'm so excited to have her here because this means that we can teach you how to sing harmonies, because I listen to music and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was effortless. I hear these beautiful harmonies. I start singing and she can just pick out a harmony. And for me, it's been a little bit more of a struggle to learn how to do that naturally. And so we're going to be breaking down the process so that myself and you can sing beautiful harmonies. Let's dive in. So what is a harmony? A harmony is basically two or more notes sung together at the same time in a way that's pleasing to our ear. So if I were like, ah, oh, that is so lovely. So that's a harmony in a nutshell, but how do you get there? So harmonies are created using something called intervals. Okay. And intervals are basically the distance between two notes. So in order to create a harmony, you have to find two notes that sound good together, like, okay, do a third maybe. We love that. Beautiful, beautiful. So if you end up on a note that sounds not so good together, like, too close, it doesn't sound good. Then you're not singing
singing a harmony that's pleasing to the ears. So we're gonna figure out how to find the right notes to sing to create beautiful harmonies. And to do that, I feel like we need just a quick little theory lesson. I promise it'll be fun and exciting and also super duper helpful. So this note here is C. So we're gonna take this note and we're gonna give it a number. 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6, and then 7. And this is actually the same note. This is C. So we're back to 1. Now, if I sing the 1 and Julia sings the 3, we have what's called a third. 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. Now, if I were to sing the 1, Julia could sing the 4. 2, 3, that's lovely. Or she could sing the 5. 2, 3, 4. Now, there are a variety of notes that are going to sound good to harmonize any given note, and that can be a little bit complicated, and we're going to save that for another day because I want to give you a tried and true surefire way to find a harmony so that you can get started on this and make beautiful harmonies for yourself. So, we're going to play a little game, and we're going to use the Beatles. The Beatles are here to help us because if you've ever heard Twist and Shout, you're going to have some context for what we're talking about here. So in order to do this, we're going to need a couple different notes. So we're going to bring one more voice in. Okay, so thanks to the Beatles, many of us will have a reference point for that Twist and Shout song and that really fun we need our other voices back. So we have a reference point for that. And if you can call that to mind based on any melody note that you're trying to sing, you're going to have those intervals, those notes that you need to create a harmony. And we're going to keep it really, really simple for now. And we're just going to work on that first harmony, which is called a third. So if I'm singing that's good. It's gonna sound beautiful. So let's actually apply this to some exercise. So we're gonna play a little game. I'm gonna sing a note, and then I'm gonna wait and see if you can sing the third, and then Julia's gonna join in after a couple seconds, and then she'll sing that third. So you can try first on your own, but if you can't find it, if you're singing the same note as Julia, you've nailed it. Okay, so here's my first note.
I'm not singing.
Okay, and then let's do this one. Let's slow. Okay, and then this one. Yes. And if you're struggling with this, just go back to that Beatles thing and sort of like try to imagine that whole line in your head. Right? That's going to help you figure out where you need to be. So that was a fun little game. So now that you've practiced finding that third, let's apply it to a song. So if I were to sing, and I'm free, I'm going to listen for the third above that note. We got harmony. So now the tricky part is, what do you know? What do you do next?
So I'm gonna move in parallel thirds. So we're actually gonna keep the interval the same,
okay,
moving along with the melody.
So just to break it down, I'm singing, I'm free, free falling.
In this video, you'll learn how to harmonize. Use your voice and layer it up to sound nice. 4 simple techniques that I'm about to teach you. I just ask you to subscribe now. Ring the bell, buckle down, and I will show you how.
Today we're going to take a look at 5 types of vocal harmonies that every single musician needs to know. To get started, I'm going to show you a technique that's incredibly simple, yet super effective. It's undoubtedly the easiest type of harmony that you can do, but it will make a huge difference in the catchiness of your song. And that is the parallel harmony. This is where you take a melody and you harmonize it by shifting the melody up or down to a different fixed note in the scale, typically a third or a fifth. To show you what it sounds like, here's a simple melody.
This is a sample of a parallel harmony. It feels good, it makes you wanna sing along to the melody.
Now to harmonize it, I'm going to take the exact same melody and just sing it a third above. That's it. The timing, phrasing, and direction stays exactly the same. It may seem very basic, but listen to how much of a difference it makes.
This is a sample of a parallel harmony. It feels good, it makes you wanna sing along to the melody. You should try it.
And just like that, we've added a ton of depth to the melody using a simple parallel harmony. If you're learning this technique for the first time, I recommend starting with thirds. They sound incredibly natural, and they aren't super difficult to wrap your mind around if you're not used to harmonizing. All right, technique number 2 is the counterpoint harmony. Now this is where things get fun. Instead of singing the same rhythm as the melody, like we did with the parallel harmonies, we're going to create a whole new melody that moves around the main one. I like to think of it as 2 melodies that are completely independent, but are having a conversation. And when you hear them together, they blend beautifully. To show you how it works, here's a melody.
This is a counterpoint. You gotta listen to how it sounds. It isn't always an echo. The different harmonies will go their own way, but still have flow.
Now I'm going to add another melody and harmony on top of that. It'll be completely different, moving in its own direction with its own phrasing, but listen to how it still manages to work with the original melody.
This is a counterpoint. You're gonna listen to how it sounds. It isn't always an echo. The different harmonies will go their own way, but still have flow.
This technique can take a little more practice to get right, but it's incredibly cool. If you're new to counterpoint harmonies, try keeping it simple. I recommend starting with 2 lines that move in different directions. Maybe one goes up while the other goes down. And once you're comfortable, you can experiment with more intricate patterns and movements. Moving on to technique number 3, which is the pedal point harmony. This technique is all about building tension and release. Instead of moving your harmony around with the melody, one voice holds a single low note, a pedal note, while the other voices move around it. Let's take a look at how it sounds. Here's the melody.
Pedal point harmonies are full of tension, 'cause that root note never moves at all.
Now I'm going to add a harmony underneath it that just stays on one note, one single note. That's it. Listen to the contrast between the moving melody up high and the steady pedal note down low and how it creates tension.
Pedal point harmonies are full of tension, 'cause that root note never moves at all.
This technique anchors the whole song while still allowing the harmonies to change and develop. It's a great way to add some emotional weight to your melodies. If you're just starting out, I recommend starting with a simple low note and then playing around with higher melodies until you find something that works. Technique number 4 is the open harmony. This one is all about space. Instead of having the harmonies tightly packed together, we're going to spread them out and give them some room. With open harmonies, you're essentially using wide intervals where the root note and the top note are far apart. This creates an incredibly open and airy sound that lets the harmonies breathe. To show you what it sounds like, here's a melody.
Open harmonies give a sense of space between every line that we say.
Now let's spread the harmony out. I'll start by singing the 5th, and I'll increase the interval throughout. Listen to how much space and depth this creates.
Open harmonies give a sense of space between every line that we say.
The wide intervals give the vocals a much bigger, more expansive feel. I find this technique is perfect for softer, folkier music. If you're new to open harmony, don't worry, it's easier than it sounds. To start, I recommend singing an octave above your bass melody, and then experimenting with alternative melodies in that higher register. Next, we've got technique number 5, the close harmony. This is where things get really tight and blended. Close harmony is basically the exact opposite of open harmony. It's when we sing notes that are really close together, usually a root, a second, a third, or a fifth apart. The harmonies follow the main melody, but because the intervals are so tight, it creates a rich, warm sound that almost feels like the voices are melting together. To show you what I mean, here's a melody.
Listen and you'll see close harmony. It's your destiny.
Now I'm going to add 2 close harmonies that turn that simple melody into full-blown moving chords. Notice how the tightly packed notes changes the texture of the sound.
Listen and you'll see close harmony. It's your destiny.
These harmonies really blend into one another, creating a thicker, more unified sound. If you're just starting out with close harmonies, I recommend plotting your vocal parts with piano chords. Once you figure it out, you can isolate each note into its own vocal line. If you want to see these harmonies put to use in a real song, then you need to check out this video right here, where I record a full a cappella song completely from scratch. I'll see you over there.
All right.
Today I'm going to take someone with no musical experience.
We're not watching this, sir. I'm sorry. I'm trying to I want a very specific mission. None of you. I mean, that one was fairly decent, but I need something that. Come on, bro. I'm giving you the shot, bro. I'm giving you the shot, bro. Don't fuck this up. Don't you fuck this up.
What's up, everybody? I am Legend, and in this video I'm teaching you how to record harmonies in your songs. We've already talked about how to do lead vocals, but today I'm focusing on the techniques that I use to record harmonies in any DAW. Even though I'm working in Logic Pro X / GarageBand, this can be applied to any DAW that you're working with. You just have to use your own interface. Let's dive in. So if you haven't already checked out my how to record vocals video that talks about how I record my lead vocals, be sure to check out that video linked above. But today we're focusing specifically on how to record harmonies, because it's not as simple as you might think it is. Now, sometimes it can be, but there are techniques that you can use to make your songs sound nice, lush, and full. I'm working on the song called Peace and Love that I started on my stream last Saturday. I just wanna live in peace. Got a nice lead vocal. And love. In peace. And love. Oh. Now we do have one harmony in here on the chorus. This was to kind of get a more simple approach in this section of the song, because the beat is pretty much really stripped down and dialed back at this point of the song. So I didn't want to put harmony stacks on here. So the first thing that you want to do recording your harmonies is decide where you're going to put the harmonies. And the reason why you want to know exactly where is because sometimes, like in this case, if I were to put a whole bunch of how I usually record 4 stacks, but since it's so stripped down here in the instrumental, literally just a guitar, you don't always want to load it down with a full choir of vocals. You want it to match the intensity of the music. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and go with the lead vocal and the lead vocal dub. So this is one way to record harmonies. You just record 2 lead vocals, you do some processing to make it sound a little bit more full, and I'll show you what that sounds like. So I'll play the lead here. I just want to live in peace. In love, just one lead. In peace, in love, I just wanna live in peace. Now listen to this harmony. In love, in peace, in love. So once one trick that I utilize when I'm recording vocals like this, and I want it to sound more stripped down, but I also want to have that harmony in there, is I just do a simple duplicate of that lead vocal that we already have. I put that here and I record onto that. So, you know, just select it, you click record, and you record wherever you want to record. But then I process the vocal a little bit differently, because here I still want it to have some kind of surround sound effect. And usually with the panning, when you record 4 vocals of one part, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, the reason you do that is...
I'll be right back, guys. Be right back. I'm gonna keep the video playing. Actually, matter of fact, y'all are just gonna have to wait. I'll be right back.
a more full sound. But when you have one or two vocals on a part, you can't utilize that. So you have to use plugins to achieve that effect. So we've already recorded the second part to this. In love in peace. So that's what it sounds like without any of the effects applied. Now the way to get this to sound more like there's not like there's multiple voices, but in a sense it kind of does sound like that, but it just makes it sound more full. The way to do this is what I like to do when I'm doing these one-off stacks, not like 4 or 2 or whatever, is I'll throw on my processing. So in this case, we'll just use Greg Wells Voice Centric, and I'll talk about plugins in a future video when I talk about how to mix your vocals, because I'm going to do another video on that. So you record your lead vocal, we have it here, and then the stack is here, and it's going to be just one, and I turn the doubler all the way up, or like at least halfway, but probably a little bit more than halfway, because what that does is it doubles without doubling the vocal. It doubles the sound. It kind of gives it this chorusy effect. And I also maxed out the reverb, so it has a lot of that reverberation going on, the bouncing off the walls. It sounds a little bit more full and like the vocal is filling a room rather than it sounding like this.
Alright guys, I'm gonna end the stream.